Hello and welcome in. I am Greg Smith, recruiting extraordinaire for Hail Varsity. I am joined once again for our Thursday football video by staff writer for Hail Varsity, Steve Marik. Steve, how are you this morning, man?
I'm doing great, Greg. We got a big day of basketball. Apparently, I haven't really looked at a bracket yet, so I need to get that going because games are going to be starting here in about 30 minutes ish. So
yeah, I keep getting these alerts that like fill out your bracket, make sure your bracket is complete. Yeah, I have not really looked at too much of it either.
yep.
But bracket talk is actually not why we're here. There's plenty of basketball to be talked about, but we are actually here to discuss spring football once again. As we Nebraska is in spring break right now. We're about a third or so of the way through spring practice ahead of the spring game, April 9th at Memorial Stadium. And so we've been doing a lot of on hailvarsity.com, a lot of looks at what has caught our ear so far. Steve has written a couple of pieces on that. And I've talked some on the website as well about what's kind of caught my attention or our attention through this time so far. So we want to put a twist on that. I guess I want to really kind of dive into with you today, Steve. It's what's one thing that you want to learn more about as we finish off spring practice here?
It's the center position.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a big hole that they need to fill, and it's big shoes that they need to fill too with Cam Jurgens departing for the NFL draft. So yeah, I mean it's something that I don't think they have an answer to yet, and that's totally understandable because you had Cam there for 3 years and not a lot of guys got a lot of game reps behind him when he was here. So I know if we're into the looking at the hype videos and trying to slow down and go slow-mo and pause on who is where during these practices, you're going to go with Trent Hickson as one of those leading guys at the center position, but we don't really know until they step out against Northwestern in August. So yeah, this center position is kind of the top one for me. They've said a lot of things and not a lot of specific things about the offensive line and kind of where guys are at, specifically like Kevin Williams Jr. and Hunter Anthony, those two transfers that they got this offseason. Scott was very coy about where they were lining up during practice, but they were lining up somewhere. Don't know right or left, and that's fine. Like it's the off season, it's the spring. These things, they're learning about their team right now and what they got, especially on the offensive line. So he doesn't have to have everything figured out right now, of my personal belief. So he's got plenty of time to figure that out. They got plenty of time to learn and develop and learn what Donovan Raiola wants to teach them and wants that unit to be about. So yeah, overall, it's that center position for me.
Yeah, and you know what? One of the really interesting things about that center position is that, and really the offensive line as a whole, is that we only are going to know so much, right? Because of Turner Corcoran and Teddy Prohaska being out, two projected starters for the unit. Like it's difficult to know what shape this line is going to take, especially considering, related to your center question, and I do think that one is really a good top of mind question right now and should be for everyone, is if they continue to kind of hint around, at least behind the scenes and some publicly too, about Turner Corcoran and his ability to potentially play center. Like they really like his athleticism. Sweet feet is the way that he's continued to be described to me as well. And so seeing what that looks like won't happen until potentially the summer, right? Until he's actually back. And so that's going to keep things interesting as well. And so we just need to continue to see how it plays out. Like I love you saying that Frost has been coy about the situation, which has definitely been kind of his MO just in general. My own personal belief is like, I don't know how much stuff actually helps the team. It sure obviously would make our jobs easier if he gave a little more information on that. But that's not his job to make our jobs easier. And so I understand. But we've got to see kind of how everything shakes out, because there's so many different sliding puzzle pieces to figure out with that offensive line. But we'll kind of see as we move forward and learn. I think we will continue to learn more about that as spring goes on and guys get settled in. But I think that the thing for me is it's actually related to that. And your center question is the running back position. like we've seen you. I'm glad you mentioned kind of the hype videos and the stuff that they've put out, because if you've watched one of those, and I know those of you watching this have, and you slowed it down or you've even seen it full speed, you know that Anthony Grant has busted off a couple of long touchdown runs in these scrimmages or in these practices. So how's he been doing? I continue to hear really good things about him. He looks good on video. I think that all reports indicate that he has been like faster than they realized when they signed him and brought him in. He was a guy that Brian Applewhite, the running backs coach, also really liked when he was still at TCU. So that's good. And then the other guys at running back, we've seen the Jacques Yant photos because he keeps putting them out on social media. We've seen the videos of him too. He's looking great. He's been the coaching staff has been complimentary of him as well in various press conferences. And then you kind of have old faithful Ramir Johnson still in the mix, who, and I did it again. Like, it's funny because I was on the radio the other day and I was talking about the running back spot, and I started with basically everyone else and then remembered Ramir Johnson at the end. I got to stop doing that. Sorry to Ramir, because he is the returning starter, right? And the returning leading running back rusher from the team. And he's going to have a large say in what happens with that as well. And he's got a unique skill set, but we just don't know much about it right now, in part because we haven't talked to Brian Applewhite since spring practice started, but also in part is that there's just so many guys in that mix with more on the way.
Yeah, you bring up a good point with the running backs and Brian Applewhite, because during his media session, which I really loved, I loved listening to Brian Applewhite. He's a deeply passionate guy about the sport of football, and I really enjoyed listening to him talk. But during his conversation, he mentioned that he likes to have 3 guys. That's the number, like, because Mickey Joseph on the receiver front, he said 9. Now, if I believe that he wants 9 guys in his rotation, I'll believe it when I see it, because that's going to come down like once the season hits, in my opinion. But yeah, Brian Applewhite said he likes to have 3 guys at the running back rotation, and there's going to be a lot of oars when the first depth chart comes out, and maybe even like during into the season, which is understandable. Like, he does it the way he does it. So, and if we're looking at the roster and we're trying to pick out, trying to predict who those 3 running backs would be, I think you just mentioned them. I think that there's Jacques Yant in there. I think there's an Anthony Grant in there, and I think there's a Ramir Johnson, because all of those guys have different skill sets that I think can bring something different to the offense. If you're in 3rd and long, and if you are in a passing down or something like that, and you want kind of a pass catching guy back there, Ramir Johnson is your guy. Like, I think he's one of the fastest dudes in the room too. And he's a smaller guy at 5'10", 185 pounds, which might not fit your prototypical running back in the Big Ten, but on 3rd down, he can be really effective. And he showed that last year, especially against Michigan, I think it was, where he had over 100 yards receiving, I think. And then when you have Yant, boy, I mean, 245 pounder with moves, with quick feet. There's nothing cooler in the game of football than that, in my opinion. And then Gabe Ervin, just listening to what, like you mentioned, Applewhite was recruiting him while he was still at TCU. He said he has the burst. His burst is better than he saw on film, and he runs behind his pads, which you always love to hear from coaches about running backs too. So those are kind of like your do everything running backs, I think, with Yant and Irvin, and Yant and Grant, and then Ramir Johnson too, with the kind of the pass catching ability too.
Yeah, and I think that, you mentioned Gabe Ervin there. I think that he'll be a wild card, right? Coming back into it. You and I were kind of talking off bit about yesterday, I think, about, the video that he put out of him kind of working himself back and trying to get back into the mix. And that's going to be kind of a thing, as he was, a true freshman that started off the season last year as a starting running back. He's going to have something to say about this whole race, provided that he's healthy. And that's before AJ Allen enters the mix as well during the summer. And if there's a position, obviously, as Irvin did last year, that a true freshman can come in and do it, running back is it. It's just a really crowded room. I think that the intrigue for me is high through the rest of spring, but that thing is going to last, I think, a lot like the topic that you mentioned at center. Both of those, I think, are going to last well into the summer and even potentially into the season to see where if they're actually resolved.
Yeah, and getting back to Irvin again, I really, really liked Gabe Ervin last year. Now, he was a true freshman. He was thrown into the fire. He got the start and then went down with that knee injury. And it was so like brutally disappointing because I really liked what he was showing.
Yeah.
He was showing that he was out there because he was mature enough and strong enough to handle himself on third down. He was able to pick up a pass rush. And that's like, I don't think that's very common for a true freshman running back. Like to have like the confidence in a true freshman to go out there and play him on all three downs and be comfortable with him to protect the quarterback when a blitz comes from that A gap, B gap, C gap, wherever it comes, for him to identify it and put a lick on the free pass rusher. That's really impressive. And it just sucks that he went down with that injury. And, he's, I've seen some videos of his rehab on social media and he's looking extremely quick, very, very close, I guess, maybe to getting back to where he was. But again, that's going to be a process and we're not going to see him until maybe the fall. But yeah, I mean, Gabe Ervin is just a guy that I'm really interested in and just extremely disappointed that, he went down with that injury last year. And another guy I kind of want to get your thoughts on, and I'm kind of curious because his name has popped up here and there at both receiver and running back, is that walk-on Brody Belt. I don't know what some people's opinions are of him playing, but I really think that he's shown some really good things just from listening to Mark Whipple and Mickey Joseph. He's just kind of like, he's got good quickness in a short area. He can get you some yards after the catch. I feel like he's a small, quick, agile, good option that I think that you can put it there and either the slot or motion him back into the running back, just like he did last year when the running back depth was kind of hurting. But I think he does some good things out there, Brody Belt.
Yeah, I would agree that he does. He has a skill set that you definitely could find a way to use.
Yeah.
And it may be because we haven't heard from Applewhite since spring practice started. There's been a lot of talk about him from Mickey Joseph. Like when I was looking back through yesterday through our Mickey Joseph stuff, and he talked about, I think he actually flat out said Brody Belt is going to play this year. And so that kind of made me think that maybe they're using him kind of as a slot receiver. But even as you said that, it kind of made me think of if you kind of carve out a role for him in the slot where he could also maybe take some jet sweeps or he could motion into the backfield. There's some different things that you could do with him there just to be able to utilize that skill set. And I think you're right. Like he's a guy and probably is just going to figure into the mix. Like it feels like to me that the coaching staff, he's been able to build trust with the coaching staff. It always helps when they feel like they can put you out there and you know what you're doing. Like that is always going to be put at a premium in this offense. It feels like under Scott Frost, even as it kind of changes and evolves. So I definitely think that we're going to see him in some way, shape, or form this season.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like, is he going to be like an every down guy like you put out there? I don't think so. But like, let's just say hypothetically, if Casey Thompson is a starting quarterback at Nebraska this upcoming season, and they're going through the game, and maybe Scott wants to throw in some of the option stuff that they showed last year. Maybe that's something where Logan Smothers and Brody Belt would come out and put two athletic, fast dudes on the field and let them go to work in that kind of interesting, fun zone read option type football that they were running last year. So that's just another thing that I have fun thinking about, like all the different things that could happen. And getting a different quarterback on the field, maybe in Logan Smothers, if he happens to be the backup, or if Casey Thompson wins the starting quarterback job.
Look at you cooking up new offensive wrinkles for the team this year. It's really, that is going to be something though that I think as we get through spring and get into the season, I'm predicting that that's going to be something that comes up a lot. Like what's going to be kind of the wrinkle. Remember a couple of years back, and this started then when Nebraska did that option stuff against Ohio State and it worked and it went down the field and then it kind of went off track after Ryan Day called that timeout. That that always like kind of stuck with me, is it felt like ever since then we're always trying to figure out what those wrinkles are going to be. They've sometimes brought them in. They figured some out last year. I'll be curious to see how that goes again this year too, because I do think the opportunity will definitely be there for them to do it. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us on this video. Make sure you guys are checking out hailvarsity.com. We'll have coverage of spring practice and everything else going on in the world of Husker athletics. We got women's basketball going on right now. Baseball starting to heat back up maybe a little bit after a sluggish start, and plenty more content. We'll see you guys back here again next week at the same time.